Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, November the 16th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that even though we are a news podcast, we do try to be family friendly, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, guys, maybe things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Really, aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start this? Well, by now, from a political standpoint, the Democrats have regained control of the Senate, but it does look like that the Republicans may actually get the House. The last count was 217. They are one representative away from actually controlling the House, which we kind of figured that was going to happen considering the scenarios we talked about the week before. That being said, guys, we did want to cover this because, yes, as we said, with the senator race in Georgia, it is going to a runoff between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock. However, if you ever needed a reminder as to why in the blue hell this really should be a contest, Exhibit A.
Do you know we're the greatest country in the United States in the world because we have the United States military? The greatest country in the United States in Do you know we're the greatest country in the United States in the world because we have the United States military? The greatest country in the United States in
Yes, I feel that person's TikTok. Raphael Warnock, the reason why the United States is the greatest, we're the greatest country in the United States is because I was like, it's just whoever is the public relations person for Herschel Walker needs to be fired. Then again, Herschel Walker, and the reason why I point this out, I have to point this out because he when it looked down to it, he got 48% of the votes. Raphael Warnock got 49%. According to the runoff rules in Georgia, they have to have whoever is ahead has to have at least 50,000 votes to avoid a runoff. Unfortunately, Raphael Warnock did not cross the 50,000 vote threshold, which is why they're heading to a special runoff that'll be held December 6th. I cannot stress this enough. The fact that Herschel Walker still has a shot at being a U.S. senator, a man who has lied more times on this campaign trail, a man whose family has came out and literally said, don't run, a man who sat there and had multiple allegations, paying for abortions and denying the women, even though women are starting to come up like Bill Cosby all of a sudden. Again, with all the lies and BS this man has thrown, he somehow in Georgia got 48% of the vote. Georgia, I know the last time we had a special election, we asked you to do your job. We're asking you to do your job again. This should be a no-brainer. But the fact of the matter is, we do have to have that reality that somewhere, somehow, some way, Herschel Walker could possibly be your next and second black man as a U.S. senator for the state of Georgia. And I'm sorry, forget my language, that's a scary fucking thought. But speaking of things, like I said before, talking about the current situation, Democrats do at this point virtually control the Senate, and it looks like the GOP may get the House. However, there are still key races that are still being too close to call that could swing it either way.
from ABC's 538 and ABC's Jay O'Brien from the Capitol with more on this. Jay, now that the Democrats have clinched the majority in the Senate, what's at stake for both parties in this Georgia runoff?
Well, one of the most immediate notions is that if Democrats win that Georgia runoff, if Warnock wins, you've heard over the last few years the name Joe Manchin. Americans have become very familiar with that name. Democratic senator from West Virginia, conservative Democrat. He's long been the holdout vote on some very key votes in the Senate. Manchin's power over some of those very, very tight votes would not be as strong as it is now if there is a 51-seat majority in the Senate. And Democrats have signaled that because they have that majority, they're going to go on some key issues that the president has already laid out. Codifying Roe v. Wade is obviously one of the first initial things on the agenda. But we just heard the president, when he was speaking in Bali, reference that. He made this point, and it's worth noting here, which is that he said, I don't think there's enough votes to codify Roe. He just said that. And what he's referring to is that there are the votes in a Democrat-controlled Senate, but likely not in a GOP-controlled House, certainly not if Republicans take back the House. And so it goes to this larger notion of any legislation that comes out of a Democratic-controlled Senate would come up against most likely that GOP-controlled House and vice versa, Diane.
So, Galen, Republicans need just 7 seats to win control of the House. So what's their clearest path to victory at this point?
The clearest path to victory at this point runs through California. So right now, Republicans are leading in 10 seats, 10 House seats. You know, of course, they haven't been projected yet, but we expect that at the end of this, once decision desks get to their, greater than 99% certainty, that this will be a narrow majority for Republicans in the House. And I should say what's happening in California right now is counting a lot of mail ballots. So California is a little bit unique in that mail ballots only have to be postmarked by Election Day. They don't actually have to arrive by Election Day. So ballots are coming, there's a lot of districts in California that only have, say, 50, 60% of the expected vote counted. And, it's not that those races are necessarily going to be super close. It's just that not enough of the vote is in. So there are a bunch of districts that we do expect to go to Republicans. And then there are some borderline districts that will decide, assuming that Republicans get to their majority, just how narrow that majority is. If it's only 1 or 2 seats, retirements, absences could really shake things up in terms of whether or not there are votes to get anything done in the House. So this could really be setting Republicans and Democrats up, Washington up for chaos, honestly.
Just what we need, more chaos in Washington. Jay, Speaker Nancy Pelosi told George Stephanopoulos yesterday on This Week that she would not comment on whether she would run for Speaker again if Democrats do hold on to the House. Meanwhile, Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy, he's already launching a run for Speaker. Talk us through those dynamics there and what comes next.
Yeah, you're mentioning chaos. Galen is mentioning the slim majority. That's what we're facing right now. There's a lot of drama behind the scenes when it comes to McCarthy's bid for Speaker. We know that he has opposition among some of the further right members of his party inside the House Freedom Caucus. How much opposition there is unclear. There's likely to be a long shot bid to challenge him for Speaker, not necessarily a genuine bid that would throw McCarthy off balance, but to show the rest of the party that Kevin McCarthy doesn't have those 218 votes he needs to become Speaker.
All right, Galen Druk, Jay O'Brien, thank you.
All right, so really, as I said before, there are still some races that are actually happening out there with the House that hopefully by the end of this week we'll have a clearer picture. It is more than likely that the House of Representatives may be controlled by the Republicans, while the Senate and the presidency is still controlled by Democrats. So possibility remains that could actually happen, but will remain to be seen. I do find it interesting that Pelosi, of all people, is saying that she's not going to comment on leadership. I have been saying this for the longest time, that there needs to be term limits for senators and representatives in the same sense as the presidency. It actually should be the same level as the presidency. That term limits are 2 consecutive terms. So when we have a new president, or a possibility of having a new president, Senate and representatives should be on the same Senate and representatives should be on the same level. Because let's be honest, you have most folks who started off in Congress in their 20s usually don't leave until their 80s or 90s. Now, don't get me wrong about Pelosi. She has done some great things. However, I believe she has also been a big blocker of progressive ideas. Chuck Schumer has said a lot of progressive ideas, but has yet to bring anything to the table outside of a few measures. That being said, I just think that it's time for a more progressive stand for Democrats. I think the Democrats going forward need to start being aggressively progressive. Now, that will present a thorn in the side just because of a certain senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, who, let's be honest, was the albatross to Biden's progressive agenda, in which he abandoned and then went for a more centrist agenda. Which out of those things, some things got passed because Manchin signed on for him. Would he do the same thing again? Maybe, maybe not, considering that his seat of power in West Virginia might have been slightly altered, since basically what happened in West Virginia was, yes, he still remains senator, but the representative there has turned Republican. So, I mean, it could go one way, it could go another. But I think now Manchin is more apt to actually be listening. And Sinema, let's just be honest, she's going to go back and ask her Chamber of Commerce on anything that Congress gives her. So we shouldn't be expecting a lot from leadership skills from her. But yes, I still say that the Democrats need to do an aggressive, progressive front with those who are willing to do it. And I know, the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars, just a handful of those who I believe would actually push things forward. However, if we look at the GOP, it seems that, well, even though they may get the House, Kevin McConnell, I'm sorry, not Kevin McConnell, Mitch McConnell, Turtle Moscow Mitch, is pretty much staking his claim. I mean, if you can't be Senate, why not be House Majority? And yet he tried, but this is the beginning of the story.
Let me start with you, because I am looking at a letter that Rick Scott has now sent to his colleagues that NBC News has obtained. And he says, despite what the armchair quarterbacks on TV will tell you, there is no one person responsible for our party's performance across the country. But he says we have a clear choice to make. He says, if you simply want to stick with the status quo, don't vote for me. I don't think he ever says the name Mitch McConnell in this letter. But it is very clear that Rick Scott wants to force this showdown between the two of them. The two that have had, by the way, months of, I don't want to say bad blood, but less than copacetic working professional conditions, if you will. Talk us through this, because Mitch McConnell, unlike Kevin McCarthy on the House side, only needs, 25 Republican senators to back him, and he's the Senate leader again.
That's right, Hallie. This is just breaking in the last few minutes. Rick Scott, the Florida Republican senator, has officially announced in a notice to colleagues that he will challenge Mitch McConnell to be Senate Republican leader. Now, this is, of course, for the position of minority leader, not majority leader, that both these men expected, to have the position of heading into the next year. It comes after Republicans vastly underperformed in these Senate races. They'll either end up even in the 50-50 Senate or down one seat if they end up losing the Georgia runoff on December 6th. And this comes after months of, yes, Hallie, bad blood between Mitch McConnell and Rick Scott. It is now spilling out into the open in a way that we've never quite seen before. This is a clash between these two men over strategy and vision for the future of the Republican Party. Rick Scott has made his differences with Mitch McConnell either subtly or overtly known, most notably when he released a long policy agenda for how he wants Republicans to govern, and McConnell immediately rejected it. That included provisions like making sure all Americans pay some federal income tax. Democrats had a field day with that, arguing that would be a big tax increase on working Americans. It would sunset all federal laws after 5 years. Democrats said that means Social Security and Medicare are gone. And McConnell was quite upset about Rick Scott putting out that agenda. And, then you had the election that happened. So right now, the math is quite simple. McConnell is the clear odds-on favorite to get reelected Senate Republican leader. But this is still the most significant challenge we've seen to his reign in his decade and a half as Senate Republican leader. It shows some real discontent, and it's coming more from the grassroots level, Hallie, than it is from the Senate Republican caucus. Many of them don't blame Mitch McConnell. Many senators don't blame Mitch McConnell for the poor election showing. A lot of them blame Rick Scott. A lot of them blame Donald Trump. We'll see the.
So, long story short, what actually happened there? Keep in mind, this was Senate minority leader, not Senate majority leader for the next term. That Rick Scott, if you don't remember who he is, he's the evil villain from Florida. The guy who single-handedly tried to kill Medicaid in Florida. The same guy who was a part of a campaign finance group in case millions of dollars was unaccounted for, and he was behind it. Basically, he's pretty much saying that Mitch McConnell needs to go as Senate Minority Leader and that he wants to take in place. Now, of course, like the journalist said, it does not take much to basically get ships the powers to that level of leadership in Congress if you have 25 people or more backing you up. Unfortunately, Rick Scott was facing an uphill battle as basically 80% of the GOP has put their faith in McConnell. So Turtle Moscow Mitch will be at the reins again as Senate Minority Leader. But we really shouldn't be surprised by that. But overall, I mean, the red wave really wasn't the red wave they thought it was going to be. It was more like a trickle, more like a puddle, more like a shot of cafe espresso in a Starbucks that they'll never enter into. But again, with the House races still being looked into and the one Senate race that is still out there, aside from the one in Alaska, all we're saying, Georgia, please, Georgia, you have one job. Do not let Herschel Walker become senator, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, if Herschel Walker becomes senator, then in my mind, I can apply for anything. I can apply for any job out there and say F the qualifications. Just saying. But speaking of those who have a lack of qualifications, and also apparently they believe you fail once, try again, you never know what will happen. Unfortunately, the former failure in chief finally gave us the announcement that we were all expecting, but nobody asked for.
Make America great and glorious again. I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy. If you want to know the truth, it really is. You ought to try it sometime. Together, we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time.
Yeah, no. Again, Trump announcing his 2024 president candidacy, and it's just like, nobody asked for this. And of course, the GOP, from what it looks like, if you've been paying attention to Fox and every other site outside of Newsmax, they're starting to kind of wean away from Trump. And I find it interesting that they were pumping Trump so much that it was pretty much might as well be state news. But now, Trump trying to come back, I think is not surprising, considering this man is under a multitude of lawsuits, under a lot of investigations, both federal and on the civilian level, and yet he wants to announce his presidency. But here's the scary part about that. Just like Herschel Walker, he has a cult-like following of people out there that will be behind him, and it's not a small number. And that's what a lot of people. That's what I'm trying to tell a lot of people. It is not surprising how big that number really is, that he can go out there, say he's running for president again, and people will eat that mess up. Even more so to where he actually could get traction. Because keep in mind, it's scary, it's frightening, but at the same time, it is amazing how much he has actually hit the pulse of America, especially specifically those who feel and talk and act just like him. That's what I said it's so scary about it. And even more so, you heard his speech. It sounds like when he was first running. The first time he ran, that's exactly how it sounds. Oh, well, we're going to bring people together in a nation that was so divided. Yes, that you caused. Well, there's so much violence. Yes, that you also became a part of. That, our country system is so broken. Yes, which again, you took a sledgehammer to with no issue. It was already fractured. What it was, and I said this a long time ago on this podcast, Donald Trump was literally the makeup remover for what America is, what America really is. And I'm not surprised by that. Not surprised that he wants to run again. Not surprised that he will possibly get on a ballot. Not surprised that if he does run again, he will be in the state of Florida, which he dissed Ron DeSantis, which, again, Ron DeSantis arguably may be looking at a 2024 presidential run as well. That's going to be interesting among the GOP to see who they will actually side with. Because let's be honest, as long as the mob is following their cult leader and the cult leader is no longer a part of it, they may go back to hibernation and along that with their votes. But I did want to say one thing before we moved on, that the red wave was stopped literally and figuratively just because of the simple fact of the matter that there were people out there, specifically young voters. And I say this all the time, young voters save the Democrats. I will stress that very heavily. Young voters save the Democrats. It was nobody else, because you know why? Because more I won't say kids, that's a terrible word. More younger individuals, especially 18 and up, are paying attention, and they are going against what the GOP wants, because the GOP is literally for old white men, rich people, and businesses. That's all they all stand for. But it's amazing the young voters now are actually being more progressive, are being more active. And guess what? For the first time in a long time, they are outnumbering the elder voters. So yes, thank you, younger voters, along with everybody else that actually did vote to keep the red wave from happening. Because if you thought this was bad just with a conservative-leaning Supreme Court, do you really want to see a government that's Republican controlled and with the Supreme Court? You don't think they'll go after anything else? Which, by the way, as I'm saying this, the same-sex codify bill was just passed through the House and it's on its way to the Senate. So maybe Republicans are voting for something. Maybe Republicans are trying to get political points. Who knows? Just saying, it's going to be interesting. But other thing is interesting as well is that I have a story that's going to be coming out of Texas. Is a certain teacher that decided to let their personal opinions be known. Basically saying that white people is the superior race. Yes, it's real. No, I couldn't make this up if I tried.
Tonight, an update on a story we told you about back on Friday night. A teacher at Bowles Middle School in Pflugerville was caught on video telling an 8th grade class that his race is superior. No longer works for Pflugerville ISD. KVU's Darenish Shaharan has the latest update for us tonight. Hey, Darenish.
Quita, Brian, Pflugerville ISD still hasn't confirmed the teacher's name, but one child seen in the video is the son of well-known music producer Southside, and his Instagram post about it has gone viral, getting almost 300,000 views. But that's not all. Notable celebrities and blog sites have also posted the video in outrage. I spoke with the student and his mother. They both hope this classroom issue can be a lesson for everyone.
Deep down in my heart, I'm ethnocentric, which means I think my race is the superior one.
Yeah. Carmelo Llewellyn still trying to understand why his 8th grade advisory teacher told the class his race is superior. How did that make you feel?
Kind of upset, kind of mad.
In the video from Thursday, you can see the 13-year-old asking to go to the restroom. Then the conversation took a turn.
Hey, I think everybody thinks that. They're just not honest about it.
Hey, I'm not racist, though. I like all types of kinds.
Did I say I don't like people?
People only think that. Wait, so you said you are what? You are racist? You're saying you're racist? I think everybody's a racist at that level.
No, I was mad because, I was just mad. He should be a teacher.
Mad for multiple reasons. Carmelo's mom, Janae Hardy, says her son told her right away, but staff at Bowles Middle School didn't call her.
And someone should have contacted me personally if you're talking to my child and have my child write the statement.
Pflugerville ISD says as of Monday, the teacher no longer works for the district, and quote, "We want to reiterate that this conversation does not align with our core beliefs and is not a reflection of our district or our culture," end quote.
Teachers don't entirely shed their First Amendment rights when they walk into school or classroom, but there's definitely limits.
UT education professor David DeMatthews says it's clear this teacher was not fit for the classroom, and the need to invest in thoughtful and well-trained teachers has grown.
Teachers are underpaid. A lot of our teachers now in the state of Texas, 60% come from alternative certification backgrounds. They tend to be underprepared.
But Carmelo's mom prepared him for the tough conversation.
I actually respected you for a while, but like now, I don't even got no more respect for you.
He did what he was supposed to do, and that made me feel good.
The family hopes this can be a lesson for everyone.
Just don't be afraid to speak up, because if you don't speak up, nothing's ever going to get fixed or changed.
Just like, don't hurt people's feelings.
Carmelo's mom says she thought about pulling him out of the school, but a few teachers reached out to her to let her know that that teacher was in the wrong, and they stand with her.
Okay, so just to give us a little bit more background on that story, the teacher has actually been fired. But you know what's so funny about it? That I always notice out of these stories, why in the blue hell do they never say the teacher's name? Like, I don't understand that. The teacher, an 8th grade teacher in Texas, turned around and told a group of students that, yes, I believe that my race is the superior race. And they were worried about CRT. Imagine for a second, a group of Texans put in a law that says we are banning CRT. For all those that don't know, critical race theory, a class that is only being taught in law schools, that has never been taught in real school, that a bunch of Mayo people got butthurt about because they were fearing that their kids would hate themselves or their ancestors, because CRT actually gives the truest historical telling of America's history. And it's amazing because for all those who've been through grade school, who have been through elementary school, we've all been there, haven't we? How they tried to make U.S. history sound so rosy, how they tried to make us so hardworking, you know, that Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims and the Native Americans sat down and enjoyed a meal. They kind of forgot the part that after the Native Americans said that the Pilgrims killed most of the Native Americans and moved them out of their own land or gave them smallpox. But, you know, we forgot that little part. We forgot about the internment camps. Oh, we forgot about slavery. We forgot about the unnecessary wars that we got into. We forgot about the hundreds of travesties, injustices, and just gruesome acts of violence that seem to be kind of carried out only by one group of individuals. But, you know, CRT is bad. But an 8th grade teacher can tell his students, yes, I believe my race is superior race. See, this is why I'm saying that not only should we know this individual, not only should we know their name, we should know everything about them. And I'm pretty sure because it's on the internet and it's on the internet, specifically Twitter, the internet will never let us down. I always say it best. I don't care how good you try to hide yourself, how you try to hide your information, things of that nature. Somebody somewhere that sees that video is going to know who you are and tell everybody. So, internet, do your thing. But again, as much as I have a soft spot in my heart for educators is a calling. Being an educator is a calling. Number one, not everybody can do it. You got to have extreme patience, especially when dealing with children. You have to have patience like a saint. But you also have a responsibility to teach them, educate them properly. You don't want to make them workers. You don't want to make them foot stompers. You want to create critically thinking, logical, progressing individuals. And the problem is, in most schools these days, that's not happening. You can blame No Child Left Behind. You can blame the lack of teachers, who will blame on the lack of pay. You can sit there and say, well, teachers get better paid at private academies and charter schools. I get that too. But the state and the Department of Education and the local governments all have to have a share of the blame in this. Because again, I know it's in Texas, and yes, it's in the South. It could happen anywhere. I mean, usually when something like that happens, or when it's attack of racism, I immediately think the South. Why? I live in Tennessee. One of the reddest states, and I can tell you off the bat, when I first heard that story, I was like, oh, this is somewhere either Tennessee or somewhere in the South. Wasn't disappointed because Texas is a close third. But teachers like that do not belong in the classroom. If you want to have your own personal opinions, that's fine. But when you're influencing younger minds, you cannot let your opinion be out there. You have to teach and educate them properly and allow them to think for themselves. Because from eventually down the road, they're going to do that anyway. But speaking of things, guys, the next thing I'm going to show is a little bit on the graphic side. Because basically what is happening is that the next video I'm going to show is an inmate who was treated so aggressively, so poorly, so savagely. I kind of debated about showing this, but because it needs to be shown, it needs to have attention. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, but I will say viewer discretion is advised.
Everyone here that this video is disturbing and you may not want to watch it. That said, this story is very important and it is essential that you know about it. So if you prefer, you can go to CNN.com and read the full account there. Otherwise, here's my report.
New video shows a brutal beating of a black man in custody by 5 officers in Georgia. 41-year-old Jared Hobbs was arrested and held at the Camden County Detention Center in September. The video provided to CNN by Hobbs' attorney, Harry Daniels, shows 5 officers entering the cell and start beating Hobbs and wrestling him to the ground. In a second video released by his attorneys, the officers are seen dragging Hobbs out of the cell where the beating continued. It's not clear what preceded these 2 videos. In a news release, Daniels said the video is undeniable and the deputy's actions are inexcusable. Daniels further claimed that before the attack, Hobbs was experiencing a psychological episode at the jail and asked to be placed in protective custody. Daniels says there's a third video that does not show the incident but provides audio, unlike the 2 videos released. But Daniels says he's not releasing that video at this time. The Camden County Sheriff's Office said in a statement it has ordered an internal investigation of the incident to begin immediately. Hobbs was arrested in Camden County for violating his probation, stemming from a federal case in North Carolina. According to his attorney, he was charged with speeding, driving on a revoked or suspended license, and possession of a controlled substance. According to North Carolina court documents, Hobbs' probation officer, who was not present at the time of the incident, testified that jailers heard a large banging from the defendant's holding cell. Defendant was reportedly kicking his cell door and was told by jailers to stop after already being warned to stop previously. It goes on to claim defendant resisted the jailers and subsequently punched one deputy in the face while punching another deputy in the side of his head. One deputy sustained a bruised eye and a broken hand as a result of the incident. Hobbs' attorney is calling for the Attorney General to bring charges against the officers.
Now, we have reached out to the sheriff's office. We've also reached out to the district attorney. We have not heard anything back as far as their comment. Hobbs is in custody in North Carolina. And we should also point out something else for full transparency here. Some of the information in this story was gleaned from CNN contributor Bakari Sellers. Sellers, who is an attorney, is also representing Hobbs, but still very disturbing to watch.
Beyond disturbing, because again, this happened in jail. Where, of course, inmates will go ahead and tell you it's slightly different there. But at the same time, 5 to 6 individuals on one person did not equate to the level of violence that occurred in there. It didn't. Well, he was kicking the door and he was being disruptive. Does that mean that you guys send 5 men in there to literally beat that man down? Because that's what the thing is going to look at. They're going to look at that and say, well, it's jail and, things get rough in jail. Not to the point to where you're beating a man down. It's one thing to hold an individual down if they're not following direction, things of that nature. It's a whole other thing when you are beating that person down and they can't defend themselves. And there's more of you than there are of them. So yes, we will follow that story to go where it goes in that. I do think that those officers should not be jailers if that's how they conduct things. It really, truly is beyond messed up. Surprised the guy actually lived, because imagine if he died in that custody. Because the simple fact of the matter is, those jailers and deputies should be reprimanded. That was beyond excessive. That was beyond excessive force. They try to say, well, he broke somebody's hand, he broke somebody's eye. He busted somebody's eye and broke their hand. So that meant that all 6 of y'all had to jump him? Sounds a little fishy to me. The excuse that was given just ain't holding up. It's definitely some weak sauce. But as I said, we'll follow that story as it comes along. Moving forward, guys. Again, another strike. Another worker said to go on strike. This time, University of California. Why? I wonder why all the time a lot of people like Kellogg's and John Deere and other manufacturing plants that we talked about, nurses, educators, why do they go on strike? I can only wonder.
Historic strike at the University of California. Nearly 50,000 academic workers walking off the job at the system's 10 campuses. Kana Whitworth is back with that story for us. Good morning again, Kana.
Yeah, Robin, good morning. It's hard to believe here. Nearly 48,000 academic workers going on strike. We're talking about researchers, grad students, tutors, and fellows. These are the people that actually do a bulk of the teaching at these universities. And things have gotten so difficult, cost of living so high, that according to the LA Times, in some cases, they're asking to nearly double their pay. And in addition to these significant pay increase asks, they're looking for more benefits like childcare subsidies, health care for dependents, longer family leave, and public transit passes. Now, these strikes have forced class cancellations. They've closed down labs and caused other academic disruptions, of course, right before the Thanksgiving break and just before the final exams. Negotiations between UC and the unions, listen, they've been ongoing since the spring of 2021, but right now they appear to be deadlocked. The UC system saying, to quote here, it believes its offers are generous, responsive to union priorities, and recognize the many valuable contributions of these employees. But clearly those employees think differently. And listen, strike activity has been increasing across the country and in other school districts as well, like we saw in Michigan. Also, many employees at companies like Starbucks and Amazon are also fighting for union representation as well. And Michael, here in California, there is really no end in sight yet.
All right, Kana, thank you so much for that.
So again, I feel like we're doing the same merry-go-round, because what are the demands including? That these workers, these academic workers at University of California, what are they asking for? Higher wages, improved leave, child care support, and funding for public transit. But what's that one big thing that we keep hearing? Higher wages. Higher wages. And it amazes me that employers seem to just either don't care or protect profit first. Because these are the same employers that'll sit there and argue and cry about, workers just going to find the best. Workers are just always going to be job jumping. Cool. I say all the time, maybe you should, because there's no such thing as corporate loyalty. There's not. If you croaked, or let me use a better word, if you died at your job, at the end of the month, that job will post that job opening for your former position faster than your obituary can be put out. Jobs don't care. And I know you probably see a TikTok's been going around like saying, be the last one in, but be the first one out, and do the minimum. Well, that's what a lot of people done. Corporations try to call it quiet quitting, which you've noticed, no one says quiet quitting anymore, because it was a corporate buzzword to inflict shame upon workers. Which it's like, well, quiet quitting, you do everything up until a certain point and then you just stop. Oh, you mean actually doing your job from a certain time slot because that's what you pay me for. But it is amazing to me that corporations, the same way like the government, this could all be solved very simply. Give people more. Pay them more. Pay them more, you won't have a wage issue. Pay them more, everybody shows up. Pay them more, you don't have a staff shortage. Pay them more. Amazing when you pay somebody more, how quickly their attitude changes and how quickly your staffing keeps to go back to being normal. But unfortunately, in this world that's ran by corporations, instead of paying people more, they believe in increasing profit but downsizing on their workforces. Don't believe me? The tech industry is about to basically get the recession that they all whined and cried about.
Amazon is reportedly poised to lay off some 10,000 workers starting as soon as this week. According to the New York Times, it's the largest round of layoffs in the company's history. Business reporter Alexis Christoforous joins me live now for more on this. Alexis, why are they doing this?
Well, a lot of tech companies are doing it. Unfortunately, Amazon is just the latest one. Of course, this comes on the heels of similar belt tightening at Facebook parent Meta, which laid off 11,000 workers just last week. Twitter, which sliced its workforce in half after Elon Musk's takeover, and job cut announcements at Lyft, Stripe, and other tech companies. Now, a lot of these tech companies, of course, rely on advertisers for a huge portion of their revenue, but a growing number of those companies are shrinking their ad budgets amid high inflation and the slowing economy. Also, a lot of tech companies went on a hiring spree during the pandemic. Amazon alone hired about 800,000 people over the last couple of years to meet the surge in demand from online shoppers as we all spent more time at home. But of course, as the economy reopened and consumer prices soared, people shifted their time and money away from buying stuff and instead to things like going out and travel. And now these tech companies are trying to adjust their payrolls in order to get back to those pre-pandemic levels.
Now, I know demand may be going down overall because, again, we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, but holiday season's coming up. Right. Online shopping ramps up during that time. So what is that going to mean for that? Will there be an impact?
You know, we're not expecting there to be. The holidays are so important to these companies. For Amazon, they make up most of their revenue during the holidays. You have to believe that they feel confident that they can let these workers go and still be able to meet demand during what they now believe to be a less busy holiday season than they have seen over the past couple of years.
Does this offer any insight into sort of the bigger picture on the jobs market? Are we seeing that weakening? What does this mean for potential recession? Are there tea leaves here?
Right. Those are the questions, and economists are also asking the same questions. Overall, tech companies make up just 2% of the employment picture in this country, so not as big as you might expect. But what starts to happen is there's sort of this contagion. Other companies might start tightening their belt, and also consumers, even if they have jobs, may start to feel fearful about their jobs and maybe not go out and buy the car and not go out and do a big holiday spend because they want to be more budget conscious. But many people are saying this could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we could still see a recession, a mild one, at some point next year.
What are you watching for as indicators of whether that is or isn't happening?
Inflation. We keep talking about it. We're going to get new inflation numbers next month. The Fed meets again next month. We're going to see if they start to pull back on those interest rate increases. And once we really get a feel like inflation is indeed trending lower, maybe companies will also feel better about it and not want to lay off workers.
All right.
Now, amazing. It's amazing. Like I said before, guys, I've said it once. I'll say it again. We should not be surprised. We shouldn't be, because Amazon, keep in mind, this is just this week. Just this week, Amazon cutting 10,000 jobs. But that's not the only thing. Microsoft cutting 1,000 jobs. Uber, Lyft, Peloton, Meta. I mean, you can go from, jobs being cut from as small as 100 to as up as high as 10,000, 11,000 if you count Facebook or /Meta. And the reason why I say that is because these companies are trying to increase their profit. And I hate to say it, it's the business model that did work at some extent. That gas stations, oil companies basically did the same thing. They decreased production, but their profits still increased regardless. So a lot of these companies, especially in the tech world, are going, let's use automation to the best of our abilities and see if that increases our bottom line. At the same time, we can get rid of unnecessary funding. In this case, workers. Is it messed up? Completely and utterly, absolutely. That, Amazon of all places will be cutting the largest number. But they blame recession. That's the thing that always kills me. They blame recession and inflation. Easily solved, because paying people more, paying the general population more is what got us out of the Great Depression. Paying people more is what got us out of our mild recession under Obama. Paying people more will do the same thing for this situation. is the fact that when Republican administrations were taking away from the middle class and the lower classes and giving it everything to the top 1%, we had these recession areas. But Democrats come in, reverse said things. It takes honestly about 8 years to fix what took less than 2 to wreck. That alone says something. But moving right along, guys, we want to go ahead and go on to our feel good segment, because usually how the Frack got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we use faith humanity, but hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, and that tomorrow being Friday, being Thursday, we do want to leave you guys out some good vibrations. And this one, art is everywhere, but I never saw art in a pothole. This person did.
When you see a pothole, a few choice words may come to mind.
I see opportunity.
Is usually not among them. But for artist Jim Bacher, those bumps in the road are the perfect place for his work.
Yeah, I call them unexpected grins.
Jim was inspired by the durability of old world mosaics. So when he saw a pothole on his Chicago street back in 2013,
that's where all started.
He decided to try to fix the problem with something unconventional.
Why don't I take this art form that I'm so passionate about with this unsolvable problem, and one night I filled it with my first piece of pothole art.
Soon, potholes across Chicago and beyond were fair game.
I still don't know how legal it is,
But most cities have left the art alone. His Instagram now full of the pothole pop-ups that often feature Jim's dry sense of humor or social commentary, like an ode to holy grails during the height of the pandemic, or this recent installation in D.C., reminding lawmakers what a spine looks like. There are, of course, things that other artists don't usually need to think about, like finding potholes away from traffic and prime parking.
You show up and there's a car parked over it, and so it's game over.
For Jim, it's a way to showcase his art and just maybe help people see obstacles in a new light. Isn't that groundbreaking?
And honestly, I'm not mad about that. Although I could be really petty and turn around and do a Black Thanos just to sit there and say, just when they roll over it. Because let's be honest, when you see potholes, we've all said a few choice phrases. Let's just be honest about that. But at least he's trying to put a positive spin on it. And honestly, mosaic art is actually pretty cool, especially if you've seen the one that the guy did in Mexico for Black Panther Wakanda Forever of Kukulkan. And I just thought that was awesome. But definitely check it out and check out the movie as well. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here. Do want to shout out to my buddy. It is his birthday today, so definitely check him out. Big VZA Dot on all socials. Go ahead and tell him happy birthday if you see him on all socials, especially TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. Definitely check him out and tell the Big Luck happy birthday. Aside from me, guys, my BlackBox447 is usually my handle on all socials, so you can definitely follow me, as I usually post reviews of everything that I watch and play, and sometimes do gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, my wish going forward at the end of this year and into 2023 is just unity. We need to come together. We need to actually do more, be more, educate ourselves, and actually move forward. And I believe as a group, as a society, as a people, we can do that, but that is definitely my wish. Also, check up on your friends, families, loved ones. Let them know how to do it and see how they're doing. You might do a lot more than just saying hi or hello and brighten up their day. You may save life in the process, so definitely do that. Aside from that, guys, if you're going to be traveling, whether it's in airplanes, conventions, however, please prepare for it. Please bring a mask, as some places still may require masks. If you are feeling sick, please stay home, because again, we are still in a pandemic. The coronavirus doesn't really get said a lot, or its variants don't get said that much anymore, but still protect yourselves, and that's how we can protect others, and that's how we're going to get through this. Also, the ticker at the bottom, let me make that just a wee bit bigger for everybody to see. If you copy and paste this into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, Offense Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. And again, if you like what I did, let me know. If you didn't like what I did, let me know. I still want to know regardless. But that being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allowing you to make up your own mind, but we're providing a logical, progressive, perceptional view to go along with it. Like I did there, right? When we don't learn from, I was like, when we do learn from history, we have to learn from it. If we learn from it, we're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black 4-star military general on the armed services. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.